Okay, so with regard to the argument of whether scientists, like whether scientists should decide when the life should begin, or when the life begins, or when the life doesn't begin, and thereby scientists deciding this particular fact, that whether abortion should be criminalized or not. The problem lies in the fact, and the other person argued that majority of the doctors are in favor of abortion, even in India. uh, the problem with that kind of argument is that it's the argument of abortion is not an argument of, let's say, whether stars are in the sky or not. So if there is one group saying that stars are not in the sky, then the other groups are saying that no, stars are in the sky, stars are present in the sky. And then the scientists, push the telescope or something like that. Like he can scientifically find out whether stars are there in the sky or not. Same with whether Earth revolves around the sun or the sun revolves around the Earth, and so on and so forth. We can find it out through scientific reasonings. Now, with regard to life, there are various characteristics in from the moment of conception, perhaps even before the moment of conception, to the moment of death. There are various characteristics which this human person adopts, right? uh, there is embryo, there is fetus, and then there is the baby coming out of the womb. Then there is a infant, and then there is a toddler. Then there is, at the age of 13 or 14, you have puberty, and then you become adolescent. Then you become an adult, and then finally you are into your old age and you die. The thing is, when do you think which stage of life is important to consider a person to have right to life and other human rights and dignity of, the dignity of the individual need to be given? I could fairly argue that let's not give the right for children to live, and Article 21 should not apply to children who are not below the age of, let's say, 12, 13, 14, etc. Because I want to, because let's say, because until and unless there are 12, 13, etc., they are kind of dependent on their parents, right? Parents feed them, parents, they are not able to work in other factories, etc. And because of all these things, it's a burden of, just like it's a burden of mother to take care of the children, to child in the womb. It's the burden of the parents to take care of the child in the family. And therefore, until and unless the child attains the age of reason, it's okay to kill that child. If people have circumstances. Now you might be thinking that's actually not right, because it's wrong, it's fairly wrong. And the answer why it is wrong doesn't lie in any scientific analysis, because the fact that let's say a child has puberty is just like a fact that, or let's say a child has completed 18 years of age, is just as much as a fact that child is coming out of the womb and can survive out of the mother's womb for at least few hours. Because if external conditions don't help, just like in the mother's womb, then child won't survive. So at least for few hours child could survive. That is a scientific fact, that before being a fetus, like before being a fetus definitely cannot, it most likely, I mean, that could say, like, with the advancement of technology we could refute that argument. But in general cases, yes, the fetus is dependent on mother and inside the body of the mother. That's a fact. My argument is, why is that fact relevant? Right? Why is that fact relevant? I mean, I could give an argument that a child doesn't have an age of reason, and it's almost, at least for the time till the child is a toddler, it's clearly parents' responsibility, it's clearly the mother's responsibility or the father's responsibility to take care of the child. No benefit or whatsoever does the parent get from the child. You cannot even, like, though a baby which is, just like that, he cannot do anything, right? He cannot do any, who is crawling on the feet cannot do anything. They cannot even work on child labor farms, with the child labor in farms or factories, etc. So, that is a fact. That's they are weak, they need to be nourished, etc. They definitely don't have a reasoning, etc. Let them not give, I don't want them that they should be, it would be my choice, it would be a parent's choice whether to kill the baby or not. And, if you go to a scientist and if you say that, is this right, is this scientific, scientists cannot say that, it's not scientific, that the child, when he is 3 or 4 years of old, doesn't have an age of reason. It's scientific. And the most likely, when even if he's a toddler, like an infant baby cannot working, he cannot be compared with a man who is 21 years old. And that's a scientific fact. Now, the scientists would say, but, according to my humanity, according to my morality, I think so he should not be killed because he's still a human being. And that is the thing. You recognize him as a human being, and you recognize as a human being worthy to be protected because of your morals, not because of not because science says it, something it to be. It's not a thing that, it's not a thing that, tomorrow somebody says that, the child, and this could be an argument, and perhaps this was an argument made to Ben Shapiro by one of the questioners, who said that once a person gets into coma and loses his consciousness, right, and loses his, memory, etc., whatever, it's his consciousness is reduced, he's just like any other animal, and he could be killed. Like, he could be killed. His personal identity is gone. And, when Shapiro asked for the question that, let's say for a certain period of time, let's say for 9 months, if this man, he is an old man, is in coma, and he doesn't get back his memory, and this person says that, he can be killed. Now, again, for many of you, let's say if I go into 3 days of coma, and my memory is lost, I could never be the same person again. You would still plead, at least I hope that you guys would plead that no, Jaren should not be killed, and Jaren should be living even though he loses his memory, even though he is in 3 days of coma. But the thing is this, that you could definitely one could definitely say that, he has lost his consciousness. He has, at least for that period of time, and yeah, he could be killed. Now, that is a scientific fact, that he has lost his consciousness. The whole assessment of this, what I want to prove is this: it's not basically what, is this a scientific fact or not. The question is this a scientific fact worth considering, whether you should kill a person or not. And the fact that, if this particular scientific fact is worth considering for deciding whether you should kill a person or not, depends upon your own morality. uh, if a parent wants to, as I said, the democratic governor, advocated for killing the child even after being born out of the womb of mother. Now, that was his morality, that he pleaded for that. He didn't find anything, child is still, a small baby, doesn't know anything. You could just, and in many ways, you couldn't even, you couldn't, if you properly kill the child, the authorities or people in general could not, could not, could not figure out whether the baby was killed in abortion or whether the baby was killed in general. I mean, I'm assuming that that to be the case, but anyway, it's clear, it's well and clear that that it's a case of morality. It's a case of morality here, of whether you consider the decision of being born in, because a mother cannot survive. This argument, why I think so, it's not a good argument, that the baby cannot survive outside the womb, is that even after the birth, baby cannot survive outside the womb, for more than 3 hours, of more than few hours. Baby literally cannot survive. Max to max, if the baby is kind of a supreme, super genetics, he has some kind of that, he could survive max to max few days, but not more than that. So the fact that baby could not survive um, out of the womb doesn't make any sense. And then there is this another thing, that uh, the baby is inside the woman, and therefore it's her body, whatever she wants to do with her body. This is one major argument that is put forward. Now again, I don't see a reason why this should be considered, because again, it's my morality says, if that is the case, then by the way, the same argument was put forward for slavery. It's my property, and I decide to do whatever I want to do with my property. Case closed. The slave was bought by the slave owner, and it becomes his property. He decides to do what he wants to do with his property. It's your morality, it's the someone else morality which says that that particular human cannot be a commodity. And and my morality says, and I am an external person here, who says that even though that particular human being is in your womb, it's not your commodity that you can throw off anytime you want. That is a game of, that's basically a concept of morality. And again, when they say that life is a continuum, it's this, I agree that life is a continuum, even till the it's up to you of how you decide that the when should this person be given dignity of not being able to kill. I mean, we have different dignities in different ages. I mean, that's of course the case, because we are not provided voting rights right when we are born. We are provided voting rights at the age of when we are, so to speak, become mature, right? uh, and then that's a scientific fact, that you have your puberty, etc., and then only perhaps you, at least you don't have the age of reason by when you are, right, when you are born. But then that's a right that you get, the right to vote, etc., you get after you are matured enough to be an adult. And the right to have right not to be killed, you get right after the birth in India. Right. So and that's up to the law, and the law is decided by the morality at the end of the day. Section 377 was decriminalized because the morality of the people, at least the morality of the judges, did change. uh, and that's the reason why Section 377 was decriminalized. And in my opinion, the abortion should be criminalized, because the morality of the people should be to care for these um, the most innocent beings on this planet, most innocent human beings who haven't done anything wrong. And just because they cannot express themselves, they do not have a voice, that doesn't mean that we should kill them. And yeah, that but again, that's a moral question. And it's not a scientific fact, that you whether, it's not like answering the question whether the sun revolved around the earth or the earth revolved around the sun. You have to decide, like, right from the conception till the person's death. There are many things that are happening in the life of the person. There are many changes that are occurring in the body, human being's body. And you need to decide when that particular change is, when that particular uh, change you consider it to be necessary to give the dignity of not being killed. In my opinion, it should be right at the conception. uh, but the popular culture is that when it is outside the womb of uh, the of the mother. But even then, in some cases, people have said that even after the child is born, the child could be killed if child is disabled. So in I am if I'm not sure, but this a guy who this doctor who asked the Democratic governor, this case happened that the child was to be killed after being born, after coming out of the womb. That was because the child was having some disability. In my, if I'm not wrong, it was having some disability. Even now, the laws are, doctors are of the opinion that the children who are born disabled, could be killed or could be terminated, even after the general law of 24 month of pregnancy is over. uh, and my opinion is this: where is exactly the state standing? And secondly, doctors should need to ask this question, that if that and this is clearly a case of morality. Certainly these doctors would not, I mean, yeah, that doctor could be an exception, but at least I assume that doctors in India would not be a kind of a breed who would say that physically disabled people should be killed, right? Or physically disabled children should be killed. But at the same time, they say that if the 24th weeks, the thing is over, and still, you have the a right to and then still the mother should have a right to kill the baby because the child is disabled. At one point of time, you are arguing for the dignity to be given to the physically disabled people. At one point of time, you are saying that the reservation should be given to the physically disabled people. At one point of time, you should be saying that states taxpayers money should be utilized for the welfare of physically disabled people. Discrimination should not be there for the physically disabled people. At the same time, you are allowing people to be terminated if the child is having disability. I mean, how was Hitler different from you? He was allowing for abortion. By the way, he was one of the pioneers of abortion in case of disability. He didn't allow. He favored abortion for non-Aryan women and contraception for non-Aryan women. He brought a death penalty for Aryan women who had abortion, but he said that those abortion is definitely legal if the child is physically disabled. And even after the child is born, if mother wants to take care of that child, the states, he said that physically disabled people should be killed. I don't know how many people remember this. Many people do remember that Hitler killed Jews, but also there was a program on physically disabled people by Hitler because of his supreme race theory or whatever it is. Now we certainly won't say that Jews should be killed or something like that, but we are clearly following the footsteps of Hitler in deciding that disability should also be a factor when the child should be killed or not. That is clearly, I mean, I don't see any reason why the at least the abortion, the claim for abortion for being a disabled is something which people think that it's something that should be taken into account. I mean, this is clearly showing animosity towards physically disabled people. And some people say that it's if the child is that there is a lot of suffering that the child will go through if this particular child is born. and so better kill the child in the womb itself. My question is, then the same should go through if the child is born, right? If you are seeing that the child is, having a lot of suffering due to disability, then you should shoot the child. I mean, why isn't that against karma? So some of the in terms of abortion, um, the Hindu religious definitely, just like the Muslim religious and the Christian religious, are against abortion. But then they give this argument of, some of them give this argument of karma, that and the rebirth that is going to happen. So if it's okay if you abort the baby for physical disability. And my question is, if you abort the baby, you recognize life in the womb, and you abort the baby in the womb itself for physical disability, what's stopping you to abort the baby after the baby is born into the world, so to speak, the real world?